This video will show you how to do some background color changes, text color changes, and those kinds of things using CSS to change the look of the game themselves. So to do that, we are going to have to get into the CSS generator. So we're going to go into a story. I'm just going to open up this untitled story here. And in the story editor, right, in our regular editor, we're going to go into story here, and we're going to click on the style sheet here. The style sheet is where we're going to enter some CSS. Entering CSS is going to be a little bit tricky, but it shouldn't be too terribly difficult. So there are two areas that we can, actually three areas that we can change. There's something that is called a TW a story, and there's something called a TW passage. And I'll get to the third one in a second. So the story is going to change everything about the game itself, right? So right now, if we went to play a game, it's going to default to a black background with white text and blue links, right? So if we wanted to change that, let's say we want to change the background of our story. So we're going to go into TW story. We're going to edit that. That means we need to set a bracket that opens the editor. And let's say we want to change the background color of our whole story. Right? So we're going to change background color to, and in this case, we're going to change it to, I don't know, let's find out. So to change, to get colors, all you need is a CSS color picker or what's called a hex color picker. So you can just go into Google or any search engine, right, and do a hex color picker like that. And you can see there's a color picker here. So let's say we did want our entire story to be this kind of orangey yellow bit. You can see there's a hex code right here for it. We're just going to take that hex code, the pound FCCE4E. We're going to copy that. We're going to take that back into our editor, and where we have the text dash color colon, we're going to paste that in like that. So we're pasting in the color of the background that we want. And then to end that, we're just going to come down to the bottom here, and we're going to close our brackets there. You can do it on the same line. This is just good syntax to do it on the line below. So we've got TW story, our background color is set. So now if we do close this out and we went back into our game, right, and it doesn't matter where we start because this affects the entire story, we're going to go back to our passage, we're going to do a test from here, and now you can see the entire story has changed, right? The whole background of the story has changed color. The white doesn't look good there, so what we're going to do, if we wanted to change this text here, and again, this would be for everything in the story, we are going to go back into our story editor, we're going to go back into story, back into the style sheet, and in this instance, we want to change aspects of the passage itself, right? So the text of our game sits inside a little box that is the passage that we're playing. And I can kind of show you this really quickly just so you can get a sense of it. So let me change our, in TW passage, I'm going to change the background color of the passage just so you can see what it looks like. So I'm going to change that to white. I know what white is. White is all Fs. like that, and then we'll close that bracket. So what I did there is the passage is going to have a background color of white now, and that will let you see kind of where everything is being laid out. So if I close our style sheet and we go back out to our testing, we're going to test from here. You can now see, so here is the passage, and because the text is white, right, you can't read it on a white background. So that's what the passage looks like. If we leave the style sheet empty, right, if we leave this style sheet, go back to story, style sheet, if we leave the background color of the passage alone, it defaults to essentially clear. So it's showing the background color of the story through. If we wanted to change the text color, right, we can do something like, in this case, we would just type color and a colon. And let's say that we want black text. Black in hex is all zeros, so 6 zeros. Or we could go out, and I'll show you that, right? So we'll do that. We'll go back to our passage. We are going to test from here, and now you can see we've got black text in this space. If we come back in, right, and let's say we didn't like the black, but we wanted more of a blue color, so we'll go back into our story, hit style sheet, come back in, and we're going to have to change the color here, and color is referring to the text of the passage. We're going to change that hex value to a blue color that we might like. So we'll go into this hex, we'll go, let's say that we like something in like that shade. You can always move things around, right? So if you want it a little darker, if you want it a little lighter, you can go like that. So you're clicking around in your hex editor, and if we land on, let's say that this is the text color that we like, we're going to land on that. We're going to copy that, and then we're going to come back into our story, and instead of having all zeros for black, what we're going to have is that 43A2 D9, which should be the blue color that we just selected. So we'll close the editor, go back out to our passage, we'll test, and you can see that the text is blue. And that text is going to be blue for anything. So if we, right, so going back to playing that game, if we clicked on whiskey or vodka here, we click on vodka, you can see, right, the whole game has changed to reflect the changes that we're making. So these are universal changes that you're making for the look and feel of your game. If you're changing the style sheet, you're changing everything about the look and feel of the game. And there's quite a bit that you can do within the style sheet. I think the color changes are probably the most used by students, but you can do weird things if you wanted to do things like, if and look at a style sheet here, let's say that we wanted a background color of that orange, but then we also wanted to change actually let's keep that background color in TW story, but let's go into passage. So let's say we wanted to keep our blue colored text, but we want that blue colored text to be centered. So we're going to do a text align, right? And we're just going to write center. And whenever you put a command in, like this color command or the text align command, it needs to be followed by a semicolon, which tells the computer that that's a new command. So now we've got a text align of center, and let's say that on this for the passages, or for the my brain it just stopped working, sorry, for the border around each passage. There we go. Right, let's say that we wanted to style that a little bit. We can do that too, right? So we can do border style, right? And we could do something like dotted, like that. And let's say that we want a font style. We could do font family, and we could make that times, like that. And then let's say we wanted to make the font a little bit bigger. Let's go font size. And we'll do that at 24 pixels. All right, so you can see it. There it is, just like that. So if we're looking at now, if we close this, what we should see is a passage that has the blue colored text. The text should be centered. There should be a dotted line around the border of the passage. We'll be using Times New Roman kinds of fonts, and it should be at 24 pixels. All right, so let's see how that worked. So we're going to go back into our test, and you can see it's centered. You can see that we've gone to a serif font, and you can see the dots and dashes around them. If you want to go and do this kind of customization, the best place to work with these values, or to get these values, is from a website called the W3 Schools. Let me see if I can pull that in here. So I'm going to pull the W3 Schools into our video here. So for instance, if we were looking at the border, so here I'm looking at border styles, right? So this is a CSS property for border styles. So that border style that we were playing with, right? Go back into here, you can see the border style that we were playing with. Story style sheet, right? Border style is dotted. If we wanted to change that from dotted to something else, we can make it dashed. We can make it solid. We can make it a double line. We could make it a 3D grooved border. Don't know what that looks like, so here, let's try that. We'll go back to here. We'll make that grooved. All right, oops, not groved. How about grooved? Right, that's correct, right? Yeah, groove. So we're gonna take the D off of there. So we're gonna make it groove. And when we close this and look at our game again, now this time, it should have, yeah, you can see it's got a kind of tiny, like 3D looking border around it. So you can play around with those things. So if you're in WC3 Schools here, right, and let's say that you wanted to know more about font families, you can, in the CSS area here, just in search, you can search for, let's say, font dash family, and it should give you, oh, that's a weird, I don't like that. Here, let's just go out to CSS. All right, so there's a font family. So your CSS, you can kind of just bounce around through. The other way to do this is just go font dash family CSS, and more than likely it'll take you to the W3 Schools. All right, so here's the CSS fonts family property, and now you can see, so we were using Times New Roman or Times Serif, and if you drop down, it should give you the all of the font families that you can use, right? So Times, Courier, Arial, if you want a little bit more generic, serif, sans serif, cursive, fantasy. Right, so if you wanted to change the fonts up, right, and let's say you were doing a game that has, I don't know, like letters or something, like written letters back and forth to people, we could go into our story builder, right, go to our style sheet here and change that font family to cursive, like that. And when we do so, now we should have a set of cursive fonts. Yep, you can see them now. They're in a cursive font. Right, but this is changing it for everything. If you want to change it in a singular passage, right, you can do that in the game. So let me go back to the defaults here. Let's go back into our story. We'll go to style sheet. In this case, what we're going to do is just get rid of all of this, right? So if we delete the whole thing and we go back to the defaults, right, we're going to close that. When we go to play this again, let me get rid of some of these here. When we go to play this again, what we should see is back to our defaults, right? So we're back in the default world, and now we can style based on each passage rather than doing it kind of universally, right? You can, in these areas, you can, let's say that you wanted to take like this here, you can, right, color these things. So you can use the default background color, so only on this passage, right? So we could, let's say we want a flat color of, in this instance, we'll go back to that orange, and we want, so now inside our kind of background text color, the background color of our text is going to be orange, but only on this. So we hit add, right, and you can see between vodka and is going to be orange. And what we're going to do, so if we play that, we'll start from there, and you can see that it did the things that we're asking it. So you can do individual changes within the editor itself, right? So if we don't like that, all we do is just get rid of the that color there. If we wanted to make something italic, right, you can do that using this. You can rotate text. You can jiggle text. There's a bunch of things that you can do within, using your the tools that you have up here as well. So that's a little bit on style sheets. I'm not sure how helpful that's going to be, but if you want to mess about with it, you can give it a whirl.